Let's do it live on a sun-kissed Friday edition of the program. Merely Bo and the great Gibby. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, just rolling away here on this Friday. I would like to be outside. Unfortunately, we all can't be Nathan Zagura, this is his third consecutive Friday off.
Is
Not that I'm counting, but I am.
He's the franchise. Let it,
Yeah, well.
This is one of those ones where if you could, you should. Like if you see it, because we're not going to be great next week. So this is kind of this week's been incredible. Weekend looks like it's mostly, Sunday could get dicey, but Saturday's going to be a good day. And so, this was one where if you see it out on the calendar in the 4-day, the extended, you want to pop in and take full advantage of it. So Godspeed Z. I know you'll hit him straight. Unfortunately, he's not even
rooting for the exact opposite.
He's going to shoot 73 or something like that and be pissed off about it.
He plays the same course every day. He better shoot 73.
Well, that's true. So, to be fair, I play the same course a lot, and I don't ever break 100, I don't think. Hey, I wanted to do an exercise. I want to do an exercise for you. And trust me, it'll get to where it'll get there. It'll get to football, but I just wanted to start with the National Hockey League for just a moment. Before we get to the Marquise Goodwin news. And it's good news. It's just officially he's locked in. So there is a team 2 hours down the road from us here in Columbus, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who play in the NHL. They have been the worst organization in the NHL they're great human beings, but the worst organization in the NHL from a win-loss perspective going back to the year 2000. So they have the lowest winning percentage, the fewest amount of wins in the NHL since 2000. At that point, they're an expansion team. So they've come in. They've had no lottery luck. They've picked 3 times in the top 3. Rick Nash is the only one they really hit on. They have been the worst team in the NHL all season, save for a day here or there. They've been out of it since November 5th, quite honestly. Definitely out of it before Christmas. There is a generational player that is available in this year's NHL draft. So in hockey, these guys come around every 7, 8 to 10 years, and you can see them coming. Like it's something that is, you know about them from the time they're 13, 14. So for sure, like Mario Lemieux is this. The Pittsburgh Penguins tanked to get Mario Lemieux. Sidney Crosby was absolutely this. This kid who's playing in Edmonton right now named Connor McDavid, he's this. He scored 64 goals this year. Typically when you get one of these players, you win the cup. This year there is a generational player named Connor Bedard. I'm not going to bore you with that, and just to know that he is of that ilk by people who pay attention to it. Going into last night, the Columbus Blue Jackets had the worst record in the NHL by 1 point. For the people who don't follow hockey, if you go to overtime, you get a point. If you get an overtime win, you get 2 points. If you get a win period, you get 2 points. If you do nothing, you get no result, you get 0. The Blue Jackets have 2 games left, one last night against Pittsburgh and one tonight against the Sabres. Had they lost both games, they would be locked into no worse than the 3rd overall pick. They would have a 25% chance of drafting number 1 overall, and they would have a 100% chance and a 50% chance of drafting 1st or 2nd. And there's the kid who's 2nd is really good too. He's a center at Michigan who's kind of not quite generational but close. So they have a 50% chance of drafting 1st and 2nd. The team that they were competing against is Anaheim Ducks. They have not won a game in 13 games. So they've been tanking for
They are doing their best tank job.
They're doing it. So the Anaheim Ducks have not won a game in 13 games. They've lost 13 consecutive games. The Blackhawks are in the mix as well. All the Blue Jackets had to do was lose last night and lose tonight, accumulate no points. They would draft number 1 overall. They would draft no worse than 3rd, and they'd have a 50% chance of getting either the franchise guy at a 25% clip or the number 2 guy at the other 20-some% chance. So they won. They sent the game to overtime against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh eliminated from the playoffs for the first time in 16 years. Send the game to overtime so they get a point. They were down 2-1. Send the game to overtime to get a point, and then they win it in overtime. They win the game. So they went from 100% chance of drafting in the top 3 to, depending on what happens tonight, they could fall all the way to like the 4th, and then you have a 70% chance of drafting 5th and 6th. Just by what they did last night, it now is like at best, even if they lose tonight, a 13% chance of getting this kid. and a 60% chance of picking 4th or 5th. So that's how damaging it was. In other words, it's the most meaningless, meaningful game you could ever win. As they did. It's very similar to what the Texans and Colts did. I told you all of that to get you back to this. Wouldn't the NFL – so I've spent the better part of 2 months monitoring this, right, because of what I do in the morning, about where they are, because of generational kid, all of this. We talk about this quite a bit just because the big picture of it, it's a direct correlation. You get one of these guys, you're relevant, you win a cup. It's straightforward. None of these guys who are this type of guys don't win a cup, and McDavid will win one eventually. Wouldn't the NFL benefit from a system like this? While it absolutely kneecapped the Blue Jackets because they won a meaningless game last night, and they'll probably win tonight and drop all the way to the 4th spot and have almost no chance at landing in the top 2 or 3. Would the NFL benefit from a lottery?
I hate the lottery.
At the end?
I don't like it.
Why?
Have we can we verify that teams are actually tanking in the National Football League? Like we talk about how they're set up. We know that Tampa Bay is going to trot out Kyle Trask and our former quarterback, and you go,
yeah.
Well, are you really sure about that?
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like the NFL is still competitive even when you're bad. Like, you don't want to be the team that loses to a team like the Houston Texans. You know, when we went to Houston last year, you're going, there's a lot already on the plate here with it being Deshaun's first game and back here in Houston. And they're really bad, and you don't want to be the team that loses to them. And I just feel like in the NBA, it is just, we're going to trot out our D-League team.
Yeah, Tankapalooza, for sure.
So that's my argument.
I would say this. Okay, I would push back on the NFL from the standpoint of, so there's the NHL and NFL have one thing in common. They're both collision sports. So, like, this is what happened to the Blue Jackets last night. Like, it's physical. You put on the sweater, you lace up the skates, and you go. Like, can you really half-ass that? It's not like basketball. You can absolutely half-ass basketball. We see it all the time. You can do the same thing in baseball based on who you trot out there to pitch or who you put in the lineup. You really, in hockey, it's hard. Like, what are you going to have them do? Just, like, skate around and not score? Like, don't shoot on net? Just have them just figure skate for the game? I mean, is that what you're going to do? I don't know. My pushback to you is I will acknowledge some parts of what you said in the validity in the sense of this. No team in the NFL, and you were here when we won one game in 2 years, no team going into those seasons believes that they're going to be the worst team in the NFL. You can look at your roster and say we're not very good, but nobody goes into a season and says, oh my, we're losing every game. We got to be in a position to draft number 1 overall. My pushback to you would be this, and this is really what happened down in Columbus. Once it start going bad, go ahead and lean into it. So we saw the Colts do this with Peyton Manning. There was no – if Peyton Manning doesn't get hurt, then they don't have Andrew Luck, obviously. And Manning plays the rest of his career with the Colts. Manning got hurt. They knew that Andrew Luck was waiting out there, and so they leaned into it. We saw this in Jacksonville, too, when Trevor Lawrence was in the draft. My goodness, we saw it with Cincinnati when Joe Burrow was in the draft. Like, when those things happen, you don't set out. The Bengals didn't set out that year thinking that they were going to pick number 1 overall. No chance. Things happened. Injuries happened. And then all of a sudden they found themselves in a position, and I don't even know if at that point, at the time when they started to realize what was going on, if they were absolutely dead set even on Burrow. Like, would they have even known at that point? But Herbert was in that draft too, so was that the Tua draft?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tua's in that draft too. So all of a sudden, though, you find yourself in that spot, and then I do think NFL teams lean into it. So I will agree with you that even a team like Tampa, with their situation, those guys aren't going to camp and going, we're going 2-15. They're not thinking that. But if you wake up all of a sudden you're 0-11, then I do think you see teams lean into, or if you see teams at 2-10, 3-10, then you lean into it to increase your chances.
Well,
look what it costs NFL teams to move up.
The years that we won one game, or the year like we went 3-13 a couple times in the years I've been doing this. You're out of it before October 1.
Yes.
I mean, the first week in October, you're going, all right, we got to pivot. What are we going to talk about for a 4-hour pregame show every week?
Correct.
So I understand. I just I don't, and I think this is how the NFL is able to keep their parity. Does that make any sense?
Well, yeah, but just because you pick high, which we've done many times over 20 years here, doesn't necessarily mean you hit on it.
Oh, correct.
And the same thing would be true of, the other thing with the NFL is, and I think this it buttresses your point a little bit, is it's not that often that there is a consensus. Like the Lawrence, Luck, Manning, that type of player, a lot of times there's not a consensus around it. I mean, heck, there were even people arguing Manning versus Ryan Leaf all the way back in 98. I mean, there were people that were arguing that Manning wasn't a gamer, couldn't win the big game, so forth and so on. So, that was happening there. So there isn't quite the consensus. I think you can still keep the parity with a weighted lottery. And I think in a league where you think about the NFL Network, you think about they're selling everything, every sort of platform. A live draft lottery in the NFL would be a bonanza. And I do think it would keep from happening what happened at the end of that Colts season when they end up with Andrew Luck, at the end of that Bengals season when they end up with Joe Burrow, and at the end of what we saw last year when Lovie Smith went and won. And you went, what are you doing? Like,
the Blue Jackets,
what are you doing, man?
You're saying the Blue Jackets took a page out of Lovie's book last night.
They did. Yeah. That's what happened. That's absolutely what happened. And the other thing that it does, and I'm doing this selfishly too, we benefit because it's fun to talk about it, because there isn't certainty. It's good content.
Absolutely it is. Like when the Cavs were in the lottery, you're like,
oh, yeah.
Maybe. Like, it's worth watching, kids. We've struck it a couple times, more than a couple times, when we shouldn't have. Now, are you talking, is the lottery would the lottery in the NFL be every team that didn't make the playoffs? Or are you just doing...
No, it would be every team that didn't make the playoffs, and it would be weighted based on record. So the worse your record would be, the better chance you would have to pick one, but you wouldn't be guaranteeing it. And I think you could even do something like the NBA and NHL has, where if you're the worst team and you have no lottery luck, you don't fall any worse than third or fourth, something like that. I just think there's an opportunity there for more intrigue around the draft process. And I'm surprised that they have not done it to this point. That there's no reason really not to. There's no benefit to not doing it. There's no drama at all around, number one. And if you think about what it costs you to move up to, look what Carolina had to give up to move up to one. There's tremendous value in one. I mean, that Lovie Smith beating the Colts allowed for the Chicago Bears to get DJ Moore. I mean, that's huge. Huge. If the Texans do what they're supposed to do, the Bears are sitting at 2.
Correct.
And maybe somebody moves up to 2, but you're not getting DJ Moore because Houston's getting the pick that they want at quarterback. I don't know.
It's interesting. It's fascinating because I do know, from my time at ESPN Cleveland, the NBA draft lottery was a big deal. Like we had our own shows, like leading up.
Wasn't
to
Riz
it
on the jet
afterward?
Didn't Riz go on the jet?
Yes, Riz was on Dan Gilbert's jet.
It's amazing.
He was there with Michael Simon and Machine Gun Kelly and the motliest of crews.
And they won it.
And they won it.
Yeah, multiple times.
Yeah. It's. I mean, you're right. If the NFL were to do it, it would be enormous. I mean, it would. I mean, you could do the draft lottery at the combine. Because normally you do the draft lottery for the NBA during a playoff, like before a playoff.
Oh, now you got an idea. Now you're onto something. First day of the NFL Combine, first night, Monday night or Tuesday night, drop a draft lottery.
Hello.
Feels like a win.
A little bit.
Yeah, feels like a win. Absolutely does. I don't know, something to think about. Go ahead.
We do have some breaking news, actually, involving the NBA. And it also involves our ownership group. The NBA Board of Governors has officially approved the ownership share purchase of the Milwaukee Bucks by investors Dee and Jimmy Haslam from team owner Mark Lasry. The Haslams will join Wes Edens and Jamie Dinnan as co-owners of the Bucks. This is a majority ownership stake, it appears.
No. Minority, 25%.
I think it might be 25%. Spread across.
Yeah, but Edens is still the boss guy. So I think he still has the biggest percentage, right?
This is where it gets interesting. The Haslams joined Wes Edens and Jamie Dinnan as co-owners. Edens, who has purchased the team with Lasry in 2014, will serve as governor of the Bucks for the next 5 years, succeeding Lasry in that role. What happens after 5 years?
I don't know. Maybe it's a deal to buy more of it. Could be. Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, happy for that.
I thought it was minority ownership, but
it's 25%. It's 25% of the team. I saw that this morning that it was 25% of the team, but I guess I don't know what percentage Edens has or what percentage Jamie Dinan has. You know, that part I don't know. Either way, they're in the NBA. So Haslam Sports Group owns the Browns, the Columbus Crew, and now ownership with the Milwaukee Bucks as well, who, by the way, if the Cavs get a little play their way, which they should, into the second round, then they would be playing those Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, the number one seed in the NBA Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
So congratulations to the Haslam family. Big day.
That's great.
In this building. And
yeah.
Big day for Haslam.
We going to do Bucks daily?
Huh?
We doing Bucks daily?
I mean, if Giannis wanted to stop by, I don't think, going into game one of the Cavs playoffs, I don't know how well that plays. But
what? I don't think it would air on ESPN Cleveland. I'm thinking we air on ESPN
if Giannis
Milwaukee.
Wanted to call in, fine.
That'd be great. We'd take him.
Yeah,
we'd
absolutely.
Take it. This from it is also now official. Marquise Goodwin is officially a Brown.
Yes,
that deal becoming officially announced by the Browns
Not
today.
Sure why
Goodwin
it took
entering.
So long, but it's done.
I don't either. 11th season out of Texas, a third-round pick out of Buffalo. We've talked about him a lot. He's appeared in 102 games, most recently with Seattle. Recorded 187 receptions, 3,000 yards. He will be fighting for playing time in that receiver room. Where there's a pretty decent pecking order, but a guy who at times has flashed. And so it's needed. Weapons. Z and I have been talking about that all spring and through the end of winter, and it's another weapon for Deshaun Watson, and it's good to see this finally locked up. I'm with you. I don't know what took so long.
I mean, it could just been he was on vacation.
Could be,
he was somewhere. Players are back in the building on Monday.
And is that that's a mini, what is that for?
So it's essentially they will have their first team meeting. They will begin the off-season program on Monday. Now, it is voluntary, but I'm told that there will be the majority of players that will be in the building on Monday and for the week. So it's a couple weeks of workouts. Basically, it's working out. I don't think you can do anything on the field. I might be wrong on that, but it's all classroom and gym, workouts.
Yeah.
And then you get into the OTAs, and then that leads up to minicamp. It's an abbreviated schedule because mandatory minicamp will end on June the 8th.
Okay. All right, there you go. June 8th on mandatory minicamp?
Yeah, the final day of mandatory minicamp is June 8th. So it'll be June 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Okay. All right,
but
there's where you stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. That's players in the building. They'll be here early, I'm told. So.
Okay. Well, that'd be good to see him around. And it's, the crazy thing about our situation is it's hard to imagine. I mean, I suppose if one of these rookies is a defensive lineman in the third round, and potentially maybe even a running back in the third round, maybe they could play their way into being someone that was counted on. I mean, anybody can play their way on. You have a great camp, and you can play yourself into position into time. But from the standpoint of the roster is pretty set.
Yeah, it is.
So it's going to be a hard roster to break through.
And you got 8 draft picks coming up 2 weeks from now, which
yeah.
I'm not sure. I'd like to move some of those.
Well, they won't. They're not taking 8.
I would be shocked if they took 8.
Yeah, you're going to you'll either trade out. Who knows? I don't know what the cost would be to move up in the third round if somebody slips. Maybe you find a way to package some picks to move up.
Even a late second? If you package
maybe
you've got 2 3s, 2 4s, and 2 5s.
Yeah. Take some of that to move up to the bottom of the second round to get a guy that drops. I think the 2 position groups that would make the sense for a trade up would be if somehow, some way, some receiver dropped that you loved, that dropped into the back of the second round. That would be a reason. And then I think on the defensive front, if it's a really deep defensive end class. So is that something where there's somebody that you love in the second round at the bottom that you go up and get, and they have the assets to be able to do that, certainly. So something to watch for. Are we doing Tyvis next? Do you want to do Tyvis next? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, we can pivot on that. Oldak, if
we want to go, so we're gonna have Kiper at 2.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go Mel at 2. We've got some around the NFL news to get to as well. Lots to get to here on a Friday edition of the program. We're off and running. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Barking Backers, presented by Milkbone, the Browns' newest club for pet parents worldwide. Sign up today at barkingbackers.com. Barking Backers, the fan club for dogs. Speaking of dogs, so Buddy, I was shocked. Bootsy, as predicted, first into the pool. Pretty good sprint. He did put on a bathing suit, some trunks, which surprised me. I thought potentially it would just be a rip-off and run in the boxers. He did not, but he did get the swim trunks on, and he was in. I was a little surprised that Buddy Garrity did not jump in with him. Like he was, I wasn't stopping him, but he was not sure what was going on in the water, man. And he's a retriever.
I was surprised. There was no. Has he gone in the water at all?
No.
Did he try?
So no point of reference
after the video.
No, he'd sniff around. Like the boys were kind of flopping around in there, and the older two came in after lacrosse, and were in there, and he was there, and he was like looking around, but he was not locked in. Which surprised me.
Was he locked in with making sure that everybody was okay? Did he just lay by the pool and watch them?
A lot of walking around, keeping an eye on things. It felt like
that's not a bad thing.
Kind of like very curious about what was going on. Like when I put the auto cover on and off, he was fascinated by that. But I just thought like his natural instincts as a dog that is bred to, when you shoot a fowl, bird, if you will, and it falls into a lake or pond or creek or river, the first two primarily, you then go to retrieve it. And I just assumed that he would just take to that and would be hopping all over, but he was not. So I don't know. I might have to take him in there tonight and just give him a little run to see if he enjoys it. My wife says no. She's all worried about it's a saltwater pool, and he's like, well, what's it going to do to his coat? I'm like, he'll be fine. He's a dog. He's going to be fine.
He's a dog. Yes.
We'll wash him off. He's going to be fine. He's going to throw.
Both of my dogs, my one dog, we would put on a raft, and he would just float around the pool with us. He would be a little nervous, but he was like, yeah, whatever. I'm good. I got this.
This is good. Yeah. That's what we're hoping for there. We do have some news on the NFL side of things today. Nothing groundbreaking. Gerald McCoy shutting it down after the six-time Pro Bowler with the Bucks. We were linked to him at one point.
Do you remember when he was here for like 6 hours?
I do.
We're like, do we record? Like, we're like, it's gonna come. It's gonna come.
He was the one.
There's movement. People are moving around. Nothing. 2:45, 2:50. We're like, all right, well, this isn't going to happen on our show. Do we need to pre-tape something?
We did.
Yeah. Did we pre-tape something?
We did. We taped a Gerald McCoy podcast edition of CBD
that never made it to air.
We got him. That never made it to air. No, I remember this. So at that time, he signed with Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Is that who he signed with instead?
I believe so. Was that in 19?
I mean, 19. I'm going to write a book about 19. There's a lot going on in 19, brother. A lot.
18 into 19. Like it's
18 into 19 is
book-worthy.
Oh my God. I mean, it could start. The book starts the night you beat the Jets on Thursday Night Football. That's the start, and then it's everything that follows. But yeah, that had to be in that year. It had to be 19. That's World's team. That's Odell in the offseason. That's all of that. Because we recorded Gerald McCoy signs at the Browns.
We were like, we'll just do a quick 10-minute podcast, and if it drops, then we'll throw it up.
Yeah, then we're ready.
We were here. I was here till 5 o'clock on Friday. I'm like,
we waited forever. We waited forever. I can't remember if we did it or not. We must have done it on the phone. Yeah, because that was pre-COVID, so we wouldn't have had the ability to broadcast from home, so it would have been on the phone.
No, I think we recorded it here in studio, and then you guys left. I don't think you even did it on the phone. I think you guys
you got it.
Said, let's just knock this out.
Let's just knock it out.
After the show. We have his stats if he signs. We know what he's capable of.
He was there all day.
He literally hung out in the cafeteria for 3 hours.
Yeah. He was there all day. I wonder what prevented that from happening. Who will only Dorsey will know. He was the one involved, and his lieutenants. Alonzo Highsmith knows where all the bodies are buried.
Yes, he does.
This from Bud Dupree, former Steeler, of course, and Titan, signing a 1-year deal with Atlanta. Bud Dupree, already 30 years old. There was a time he was a dude. Did not go well in Tennessee for him. Dealt with injuries. Just 7 sacks in the last 22 games over a couple of seasons, but he is part of a huge contingent that the Falcons have signed. Remember, they traded for Jeff Okudah last week, the former number 3 pick in the draft overall. They signed Jesse Bates, Calais Campbell. So they've had a very busy offseason.
Throw it out there. They have built themselves a squad. Why they won't go get Lamar Jackson is truly beyond me.
You sure they aren't?
Well, according to their owner, they're not.
Yeah, I wonder if he just had to say that publicly, though.
I mean,
because I'm with you. It looks like a team that's trying to win now who doesn't have a quarterback.
What's the one thing you don't have?
It really is one thing.
You're really going to run out Desmond Ridder. You're really going to just throw all your eggs in that basket. I don't know about that.
Is Heineke there too?
I don't. Maybe.
Even still. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Odell Beckham Jr. officially unveiled in Baltimore as a new Baltimore Raven. He said in the no, he did not. Which, by the way, I also think it's funny. So, like, there was at one point he was talking about how everybody's doubted him. I'm thinking, dude, no one's ever doubted you.
Nope.
You were an enormous recruit at LSU. You were a first-round receiver in the NFL. You've been an All-Pro. Everybody's been known you're great forever, man. Like, no one's doubted you. You've been great forever. It drives me nuts when athletes say that. Like, no, you were identified young as being special. You were not. Nobody ever looked at Odell Beckham Jr. as like, I don't know if he'll make it. Like, he was always going to make it. Always.
And then after the one-handed catch, no one ever doubted him again. If anybody had a doubt, it was gone.
Is gone. I mean, he was sensational during those early years with the Giants. He did say he was given no assurances that Lamar Jackson will be the quarterback of the Ravens, but he did look directly into the camera and say, Lamar, come on home. And I think this probably worked for Lamar, too. I'm sure he was excited about it, and this gets him a little bit of juice to play for the Ravens. We've talked about it many times. Odell is so popular among NFL players.
And
so
you know what? Great. And the first 3 games when Odell's got one catch, that's going to go over
it's not going to go well
in that locker room.
No, but it's the line for bad men. That's what the money's for. No one else was going to give him 18, potential of 18, 15 guaranteed. Last one here quickly. The Bucs GM Jason Licht has said they have no intention of trading linebacker Devin White. Remember Devin White, he, of course, most famous as being an LSU linebacker who likes to ride horses, demanded a trade earlier this week. The Bucs saying no shot. Not happening on that front. We'll talk about all of these things. Spring game tomorrow down in Columbus as well. We'll do so with our good buddy Tyvis Powell. He joins the show coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Bally Bet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. We head out on the Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea Hotline, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. Former Buckeye great, Cleveland Browns radio analyst, former intern of mine, and a man with an eternal smile. The great Tyvis Powell joins. How you doing on this Friday, my friend?
Oh, I'm just smiling my butt off.
Of course you are. Why wouldn't you be?
Listen, it's a beautiful Friday. It's the day before the spring game. I actually got to go watch practice today.
Ooh.
It's just been a good day, man. It's just a good day.
Oh, I got big questions for you then on that in just a second. Before I get to that, I want to run a couple things by you from an NFL perspective, and I wanted to start with this. Do you see any downside to the NFL doing a draft lottery similar to the NBA and NHL?
Do I see a downside to it? Not necessarily. I think it'll be more intriguing for the bottom teams. I think it comes to a point where you get to the end of the season and there's nothing good about winning the game. You get nothing out of winning those last couple of games. And obviously we seen what the Blue Jackets did.
Yeah.
The Blue Jackets did yesterday. But it makes it more interesting because now it's like the whole tanking thing that, the Dolphins got accused of, like it doesn't even matter because you're not guaranteed the number one pick. So I think it will bring dollars in. You know how people tune in to see the lottery? I think that the NFL, if it was a lottery, it would bring way more attention to it because the sport is just the most popular sport in America today, and I think a lot of people will be invested into it. So I don't see a downside to it.
Have you ever been on a team that is in that hopeless position where I'm trying to think of all your stops, and has it ever happened to you where you were in the spot where you were long eliminated and just playing out the string?
Yeah, this would be 2017 when, the 49ers got Jimmy Garoppolo, and, we were on this big 6-0 run at the end of the season. I mean, it wasn't nothing. We weren't playing. Then the next season after that, we played another season. Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt that season. I think Nick Mullins was the quarterback that year. Season was not good at all, and I think we ended up being 4-12 maybe. We got to that last game against the Rams, and it was like the starters played like a quarter and then sat. It was just a bunch of bench players playing for the rest of the game because it didn't matter. But the only thing we had going that season was that George Kittle was on the verge of breaking the single season record. I think Travis Kelce broke it, then Kittle broke Travis Kelce's record in like the same day or something like that. So that was the only motivation we had. But as far as winning and losing, it was no motivation to win the game at all.
I ask you that because, in the NBA, you can tank and it doesn't take a physical toll. Tanking in the NFL hurts. It hurts. It's a collision sport. It's a physical game. Like, can you play in the NFL not full throttle?
I don't think you can, but you definitely should not. It's such a violent game. You go out there and you going half speed and the other guys are going 100%. You can get hurt doing that. So it's best that you just go out there and put your best foot forward. Like I say, I think teams disguise it by who they play. You'll see a lot of starters not playing. They'll put their bench players in or the second and third string guys in. That's pretty much how teams disguise it.
Next week, our team will get here for the start of the off-season program. We anticipate most of them will be here. Most of them will be here and be participating. There will be some probably who won't, a handful here or there. What's the most important thing that gets done between now and the last day, which I think the last day of mandatory minicamp for us is like June 8th? What's job one?
Well, job one is to make sure everybody gets back in shape. It's especially for the Cleveland Browns in their instance, it's defense. It's a new defensive coordinator in there. So now we got to get these guys to learn these playbooks and speak the same language. I don't know how much of Jim Schwartz and Joe Woods' words or verbiage translates with each other. Usually when you got a new defensive coordinator, they speak different terms. So you have to get those down, understand what he's looking for. So I think that's from a defensive standpoint. As far as offense goes, you got some new wide receivers in there. They need to learn the playbook. They need to learn the chemistry with Deshaun. They had 6 games with him last year, but obviously in those 6 games we seen like they weren't used to scramble drill. from a receiver standpoint, offensive line standpoint. I mean, those guys are getting holding calls. So you have to put that in practice and understand how you want to utilize all of these new weapons that you have, because you want to try to please everybody. But when training camp comes around, you need to have a good game plan and understand how everybody can contribute to the win. And I think that's what OTAs and minicamp is for, is just getting that thing down and seeing what everybody's made of and making sure everybody's on the same page.
How big of a challenge is it from a terminology standpoint? How tough is that? Because a lot of times, sometimes you're teaching the same thing, but almost in a different language, right?
Yeah, it's like it might be called cover three. Like Jim knows he's gonna run the same thing, single high safety, cover one, cover three. And it might be a hook dropper. You might call it a hook, but he might call it a buzzer. So it's like it's two totally different. It's the little things like that where you have to learn how to speak the same language. Because if you go out there and say, "Hey, I'm the buzz player," in Joe Woods' defense, that might be the guy that's got the sideline, the flats in the sideline. But in his thing, it might be a vertical hook guy. So if you tell a guy from last season, "Hey, I'm a buzzer," but you speaking Jim noses, he'll think it's a hook, but you actually buzzing. So that's where it can get confusing. That's why you got to make sure that everything's on the same page. And very seldomly do defensive coordinator change their verbiage. They make you change. So I actually struggled with that a little bit when I went to Denver. Denver has something like that where they called their buzzers the hook players, and they called it something else. They called them flat droppers or something like that. And that was confusing. I was coming down there and I was buzzed. Everybody was looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" So it's something real. You got to get on the same page.
You mentioned Deshaun and talking to the great Tyvis Powell, former Buckeye great, longtime NFL vet. When you think about Deshaun Watson and you think about an offseason program that he's going to start on Monday, without the cloud over him in terms of what suspension could come, and from Kevin Stefanski's perspective, Alex Van Pelt's perspective, you got him, and now you can just go full throttle. What do you think will be the biggest difference in having that information, and what do you expect them to do with Watson that maybe they weren't able to do last year because you never really knew until, we were all the way in camp when we finally knew how long he was going to be out?
Yeah, I think they tried to do a really good job last year with trying to get him as many reps as possible. We heard about, obviously, Jacoby Brissett being the backup, and, thank God he was a pro, because he was taking a bunch of mental reps when we all thought that he should be the one getting a lot of those reps. But they understood that Deshaun didn't play last year. I think now it's just about getting that communication with him, because he only had the preseason and he had those 6 games where he was able to, be on the same, talk to Kevin Stefanski through the helmet and be able to take what Stefanski's saying, give it to the offense, and go out there and run the offense and command the offense. I think now you have to continue to feed him those reps, because out of those 6 games, he doesn't have a lot. They have to be able to be on the same page, watch the same film together. And it's just about him being rusty and getting his confidence back. We've seen him play some good ball last year where he made some throws where you've seen it. You was like, okay, it's still there. But it never was that confidence. I think I seen him one time where he had some confidence. I think it was against Baltimore. He broke on like a 20-yard run, got up and did like a nice little first down dance. It was like that was the energy that I was waiting to see him get. And it's like he kind of, to me, with all the stuff that was going on, it's like he didn't want to put that out there because he was trying to, keep a clean image. He didn't want he already had the negativity. He didn't want to bring a cocky ego to the field, but that's who he is. When he plays his best football, he has a cocky attitude on the field, and he needs to get that back. He needs to get his swag back on the field. If he does that, I think that the sky's the limit. We'll see the Deshaun that we've seen in Houston, the guy that, he scored, he played a guitar. That's the guy that they need to see for the Cleveland Browns, because what it does is, if people feed off of that energy, teammates feed off that energy. You see somebody get up and do some dancing, it's like, man, I want to do some dancing. So it's something that just he needs to get that back for himself.
All right. You were one of the swaggiest athletes around in scarlet and gray. The socks were always scrunched. The shoes were always clean. Not quite to the level of Braxton Miller, but I don't know that anybody was that. But close. You're in the vicinity. Braxton got special shoes, man.
It was a couple of games I look at Braxton and be like, where did we got those? Where did you get that from?
The footwear especially was always unique, my friend. Like, I don't think those are in the catalog. But because of that, I want to ask you this. So Elijah Moore, I saw this earlier in the week. He he wore number 8 with the Jets, which I think is pretty cool. So he wrote 8 or 0. Now, I'm not going to tell you how I feel about 0. I'm curious which one you would do, 8 or 0. Which one looks better?
8
Same.
For me. I'm not a fan of the 0 at all. I always thought it was good. Like if you're in college, I don't think you can do it in the NFL, but in college, D linemen that wear it and linebackers that wear it, tight ends, I'm cool with that. But as far as the DB goes, I'm not for it. I just think it's a wide number. Like I think it's kind of wide. And it makes
I agree.
The jersey. To me, I don't. Maybe it's just me thinking this, but I just think it's wide. I just don't like the number 0. Now, I get that people will say I wear 0 because it's 0. You're gonna get 0 completions, or I get all that talk.
Yeah.
But like, everybody knows in the secondary, the number to wear is 2. If anybody that wears number 2 in the secondary is definitely that guy.
That's because of Prime.
Yeah,
Deion Sanders. That's it. Prime wore 2. He started it. I'm with you on 0. To me, every time I see 0 on somebody, it just looks like an O.
Yeah, I'm not with it. I'm not for it. I see that Greg Newsome is flirting with the idea. I mean, listen, maybe he can pull it off. I'm not. To me, it's not a thing.
I'm with you. Let's do a couple of minutes on the Buckeyes. Spring game tomorrow. Some juice out of it. There was a quarterback competition, but now not so. I guess the competition's still going on, although I believe that they've already made their mind, even if they're not saying it out loud. But I was excited to see Devin Brown play in his first full spring and his first year here to see how he could push a little bit. Kyle McCord is the other one who's fighting for it, former 5-star kid out of Philly, former high school teammate of Marvin Harrison Jr. You saw practice. It's 3 straight first-round picks out of Ohio State at quarterback. Does it feel to you like McCord has that juice?
You know, he actually does have that ability. Now, Monday I seen him miss maybe 1 or 2 throws, but today I seen him. Me and Josh Perry was actually out there watching it together, and he threw a nice little out route from the far hash, and it was on the money to Cardinal Tate. So who's a name that everybody needs to get familiar with because that kid can go. But I like Kyle McCord. I think he can sling the ball with the best of them. Obviously, I seen him on Monday. He completed a lot of deep balls, which is not great for the secondary, but it was able to see that he can make those throws and make those big-time throws. Nice little seam route to Marvin Harrison. I was like, this. So, to me, the throwing ability is there. I have to see how he commands the offense when the season comes around. But I think he already had the leg up anyway, bro. I mean,
yes.
We saw him, 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
CJ had in the Akron game, and he did a good job commanding that offense, slinging the ball, threw a touchdown. So the confidence is already there, And like I say, naturally he got that chemistry with Marvin Harrison. I think to me it was a layup. Even though Devin Brown may be the better athlete as far as mobility goes, I just think that you can't mess with that chemistry. And when it comes game time, you got to go with the guy that you trust that can go in the game and get it done. And what better than the guy that's already done it?
All right, you be honest with me. Could your secondary group have covered these Buckeye receivers?
Actually, what group are you talking about? It's two different. You
want to go 14 or 15? I'll let you pick it.
Listen, all I'm going to say is 2015 consisted of 2 first-round picks at corner, a second-round pick, and an undrafted safety as in myself. So, with that being said, I would have, from a talent standpoint, I would go with 2015. But 2014, Durant Grant he can bang with the best of them. And obviously we won a natty. He was our number 1 corner back then. So I think they would. I think I'll tell you what. I think that we would be up for the challenge for sure. I think Marvin Harrison is a problem. Through game plan and preparation, I think we take him. I really do.
Marvin, it's funny because people, you think about what Brian Hartline, a Northeast Ohio guy, another one of them that has done at the receiver position there. It's just next level. I mean, it's just they're coming off of 2 first-round picks at receiver last year. You're going to get another one in Jackson Smith and Jigba this year, and now Marvin Harrison. I got people down there saying he's the best of the bunch. What do you think?
It's unfair what Brian Hartline's doing. Marvin Harrison, out of all of those, it's crazy because the difference between him is he runs great routes. He's fast. He got great hands, and the difference is he has the size, man. I never realized how big he was until I seen him on Monday. I'm like, dude, he might be 6'3", 6'4", legit. Like, cause I'm 6'3", and he with me, so I'm like, and the guy is just physically gifted. He might be the best one out of the bunch, and that's crazy to say. But as crazy as I say that, this Cardinal Tate kid, bro, I'm telling you, I've been hearing the hype about him. I've seen it for myself the past 2 times I've been. I went Monday and I went Friday or today.
Yeah.
And the kid do stand out. That number 17. Y'all should invest in some stock in that kid because he is really good.
Jeez, I still think I have some 17s for the boys from the Jalen Marshall era. They might still be there. I might still have a 17 somewhere.
Hopefully he don't change his number, but yeah, that will be I believe he will play this year. They say that he is like how Marvin Harrison was as a freshman. We didn't get to see him because obviously, you got the Garrett Wilsons and you got the Chris Olaves and JSN, so he had no time to be on the field. We didn't get to see him to the Rose Bowl. But this kid here, they say he is on that same level. He's a pro. He handles his business, and that kid can absolutely ball.
All right, let me give you one. I want one defensive one. I'll get you out of here on this one because I'm hearing a lot about Sonny Styles, who switched his number from 20 to 6. He's a safety currently. I wouldn't be surprised if some people tried talking him into being a hybrid player, much like Isaiah Simmons was at Clemson. What did you see out of the secondary and specifically Styles?
Well, believe it or not, we know Denzel Burke struggled a little bit. He's had a pick. He had a pick on Monday when I watched it. He had a pick again today when I watched. So he's making some plays there. He's stepping up. I think he's really going to have a bounce back season. We didn't get to see Jordan Hancock last year, but I like his movements. I like the way that he moves, and I like this Igbinosa kid that we got from. I think he's from Ole Miss. He's the one that's come in the program and really got people having to step their game up because that kid can absolutely go. When it comes to Sonny, though, Sonny, when you look at him, when you get to see him, man, that kid is physically gifted. He moves very well for his size. They trying to figure out exactly where they want to put him. He's been in the post the last couple of times I've seen him, which I don't know how I feel about that. I would like to see him more closer to the ball. You get a kid like that who's physically gifted like that and is very physical when it comes to making tackles. I think you need to put him around the ball. I don't want them to make that mistake of keeping him in the post just to try to keep him on the field. Then you got to let playmakers be playmakers and be around that ball. So I'll be interested to see what they do with him. But he did disappoint me. They ended practice today. It was like a scramble drill. The quarterback throws it up towards the out of bounds. Sonny goes to pick it right out of bounds, like where he was going to have 2 feet in, and he dropped it, bro. I was
sad.
like, oh, my.
We hate to see that.
He don't like nice things, man. But you know what? I'm not worried about it. The kid moves well. To the fact that he was able to put himself in position to make a play, that's about 95% of the battle. He just got to reward himself.
Good talking to you, buddy. As always, thanks for your time.
No problem, y'all. Y'all have a good one.
All right, that's our great friend of the program, Tyvis Powell, of course, on the Browns radio network, and, of course, a former Buck, a great former Cleveland Brown. He joined in the Twisted Tea Hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. Coming up next, you'll hear from Mel Kiper Jr., a smattering of conversation around the NFL draft. That's coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. When a medical mistake causes your injury, call the medical malpractice attorneys at 1-800-ELK, Ohio. Elk & Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Let's hear from Mel Kiper Jr. Here's some highlights from ESPN legendary NFL draft analyst Mel Kiper Jr., his pre-draft conference call with the media. Let's have a listen.
Hey, Mel, appreciate you doing this. Wanted to ask you, over this past season, there were twice as many quarterbacks 6'1" and under start games as there were 10 years ago. Why is there a trend towards smaller, maybe even more athletic quarterbacks than there were 10 years ago?
Well, the shotgun, you're so deep in the shotgun now, you're away from the line of scrimmage. You have sight lines now that you didn't have before. Certainly, you look at the way they spread the field now with so many receiving options that you can get the ball out quick. I think Russell Wilson, Drew Brees. Russell Wilson made these quarterbacks a lot of money that are coming into the draft, at 5'10", 5'11", 6 feet, proving he can do it. Kyler Murray as well. And then certainly, Drew Brees. So Michael Vick was only 6 feet tall, 5'11" and a half, 6 feet. So we have had successful quarterbacks that have won big in the NFL and won Super Bowls like Russell did that have been that size. So now once that happened, nobody cares anymore. So size went by the boards. And you see now all of a sudden you're looking at Bryce Young, number 1 pick overall. It's not just the height, it's the size. We have not had a Bryce Young in the draft. We've had quarterbacks that didn't have the ideal at the time height, but they had the weight and they had the frame. Bryce Young doesn't have either. That's why he's an outlier. He's a once-in-a-lifetime quarterback. We have never in the history of the common draft had a quarterback his size, 5'10" and a quarter, only probably going to play at 190, 185, go in the first round, let alone number 1 overall. Then you get into, Stetson Bennett, Georgia, won 2 national titles. Jake Haener, Fresno State. Those quarterbacks that are getting a chance now because of the quarterbacks that were in the 6-foot range that made it big. So, again, Bryce has been helped by Russell and Murray. And the other guys are just helped by the fact that 6-foot quarterbacks have shown, because of the way the league is now, protecting the quarterback. I always say that they protect you, but they don't protect you from the pain. You get the penalty, but you still get the pain. So we act like they protect the quarterback. You're still getting hit. You're still getting hurt. You're still feeling the pain, but the penalty flag's thrown. So that's a little bit of a misnomer there for me. But the shotgun, I think, and the way you spread the field now with so many multiple receiving options helps the quarterback get the ball out quicker and protect his body.
Hi, Mel. Thank you. Last year, we saw like 5 or 6 draft day trades in the bottom end of the first round at 20 and below. Do you see, a lot of times if there's a quarterback who's a late first rounder, you see movement. What do you think about that? Do you expect to see a fair chance of moves late in the first round again?
Possibly. I had the Hendon Hooker trade for that reason, get that 5th-year option on Hendon Hooker. Had Seattle, could be Minnesota. They just don't have a second-round pick, so that kind of hurt me in terms of thinking that they could maybe make that move, maybe a 1 next year if they want to do that. So there's ways to get around not having a 2 if you really want to get a guy like Hooker in the late first. There's certainly a chance Baltimore, as we discussed, always likes to trade down. Eric DeCosta, to pick up a 2, which they don't have. In the Roquan Smith trade, they lost that 2. So they could move off of 22, move down, and still get a DJ Turner, say, from Michigan, who was coached by, at Michigan, their defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald. So trades like that could happen. I had Pittsburgh taking a receiver. They haven't taken a receiver since 2006. But if they go corner there, or if they want a receiver, maybe they trade down or they take a corner. If they feel, hey, we haven't taken a receiver since 2006, we're going to go corner. That could affect them a little bit, because then if they want a receiver, they could move down and still get a pretty good one. I think Seattle at 20, they already make a pick at 5. They could move off of 20 and move down possibly. You could see, like I say, teams like Philadelphia, like I have them moving out of the first round. Certainly Kansas City, New Orleans, any of those teams at the end of the first round could move out for a team looking to move in and get either a guy that slid further than they expected or that quarterback. And to go to your question about trades, there's so much mixed opinion. There's not a lot of guys with first-round grades. You get down to 15, 20 guys. So when you get into the late first, you don't have a first-round grade on a player, teams will want out. And somebody's always going to be high on a guy that slides down a little bit. They have a higher grade on than the other teams do that they may want to go up and get. So in a draft like this, which it's not a really strong draft, It's one of those drafts where you got to really pick your spots, count on your evaluators, your scouts to really line these guys up properly. I said a couple of months ago, if you have 3 years from now, you get an A or A+ grade or a B+ grade, you should give your scouts a raise, because this is a draft where you're going to earn your money. This is a tough draft to evaluate. A lot of mixed opinion. A lot of players are tough to evaluate. So because of that, to answer your question, I would expect some maybe 2 or 3 trades between, say, 18 and 31.
Hey, Mel, thanks for doing this. Question for you, just kind of big picture. Late teens, early 20s, you have teams like Pittsburgh, the Ravens, Chargers, Minnesota. A lot of them need the same kind of prospect, edge rusher, wide receiver, cornerback. I'm just wondering how you think that might affect, the notion of either trading into that spot to get to jump another team, or trading back, and how that kind of might affect other teams and their ability to move around there.
Yeah, it depends who you really like. I mean, the guys in there, there's super mixed opinion on a lot of these guys. So where one team may like them, I don't know if you can build a consensus on other teams liking them equally as well. Some fit different schemes, than others. That's why I look at Kalijah Cansey. Fits as a 3 technique. He's not going to fit a 3-4 team. You got guys who can play up and down. How do they view some of the tight ends? Are they want more of an H-back move guy, which is what Dalton Kincaid and Luke Musgrave are? Or they want more of an inline guy, which is what Michael Mayer and Darnell Washington are? The receivers, do you want a speed guy who's great after the catch and electric, like, say, Flowers? Do you want the great route runner like Jordan Addison? How do you view that? Do you want a guy that has great talent and potential, but body catches a little too much and had some drops in Quentin Johnston from TCU? So, and then where's Bijan Robinson fit in, the running back? Mixed opinion on Lucas Van Ness, the potential pass rusher out of Iowa. So it just varies. I mean, Brian Brzee out of Clemson. Now, here's a defensive tackle, played great as a true freshman, then injured, and obviously with the situation there, the tragedy was his sister passing away. He had a lot to deal with mentally and physically. So Brian Brzee's a heck of a player. He's out of Damascus High School here in Maryland. Great kid. Tremendous player as a freshman. I think he's going to go in the first round now, but some think second round. So again, those are some of the guys that I think are kind of wild cards as to where they are slotted in the draft.
We always talk about Carter, Brzee, you just mentioned, Cansey out of Pitt we talk about, but is there anyone that you're looking at that you feel like could be a dominant interior defensive lineman that we're not talking about that could end up being a really good steal?
It's a great question. I think Roy at LSU, I've talked about him as an underrated guy. Have not yet mentioned Mozzie Smith, who's a talented kid. Defensive line coaches need to work with him to maximize that ability, but he's got a chance as a second-round pick out of Michigan. Carl Brooks is a really intriguing guy out of Bowling Green. The production in the Mid-American Conference was outstanding. He can play, I think, as a 3-4 end. He can be a 4-3 defensive tackle. He's got a lot of scheme versatility. I think he could be a third-round pick that wasn't invited to the combine that will surprise people. Keanu Benton at Wisconsin. People love the potential. I didn't see the production. I think he could go second or third round. Colby Wooden out of Auburn's versatile. I see him as more of a 3 technique. We'll see about him. You want a nose tackle? It's Siaki Apu-Ika from Baylor. Gervon Dexter tested.
All right, Bo, we got about 30 seconds here.
Consistency there. Clark at Coastal Carolina could be a day 3 guy. I thought Coburn at Texas played well, didn't test great. Jalen Redmond at Oklahoma is another guy. Broderick Martin, Western Kentucky. Byron Young, Alabama.
20.
Texas. There's a lot of defensive tackles, but I think Carl Brooks, because he was not invited to the combine out of Bowling Green, you could put him at
10.
For the reasons I talked about, the versatility from a scheme standpoint. But I think Carl Brooks is
5 seconds. Stand by.
Is one of my more underrated players in this draft.
There are people who are, and I get it, who are Jeremiah guys or, some of these new age guys, and we love Dane, and there's a lot of great people out there. But when it comes time to watch the draft, I'm a Kiper guy, man. I need to hear his accent. I want to hear his voice. I want to hear his takes. It's so fascinating. Like he's one of those guys who just invented the medium. He just created the job. Didn't even exist before him. He's the only man to ever have it.
He didn't. It is crazy, and he is just an encyclopedia. Like it's one of those things where you can ask him about any player, and not just
Yeah.
like in April leading up to the draft. Like
That's right.
he did a show, I think it was Dari and Mel on ESPN radio
Mm-hmm.
on Saturday mornings. I can remember like 10 years ago. They would start asking him, Dari would try to make him miss, like in January.
Stump him.
And he would bring up a name, and he'd be like, and I mean, literally like throwing darts at like a list of like 700 players. And Mel's like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Now, maybe is it staged? I don't think so. Like, we had him on CBD a few times. Every guy we've ever asked him about, he never knew that we were going to ask him about him.
Yeah, does not need a prep.
No.
He does not need to know the questions asked beforehand. He'll be just fine, knows it, and still appears to have the exact same passion for it that he had 30-some years ago when he started doing it. Still has it, man.
And that's you say that, and that's interesting to me because I feel like Todd McShay has gone the other way. Now, I know Todd's had some medical stuff going on, and
Yeah.
he's had his share of issues, but like last week, his conference call, and we played some of it. I mean, he didn't know certain guys. Like he just openly
Yeah.
was like, I really don't know anything about that guy.
Yeah.
And that's not how he used to be. Like he was the heir apparent, and right now, I think Mel has said, I'm still the king. And
Yeah.
I mean, Jordan Reed's great. I think Jordan Reed is ascending. Matt Miller, who I know we've had on a few times.
Matt's at ESPN now, right?
Matt's at ESPN. Like
Yeah.
they've got this stable of draft guys, but I don't know if anybody's really positioned themselves as a clear-cut number 2 anymore to Mel Kiper.
I would agree with that. And you mentioned some of the issues with McShay beyond that, out of his control. But yeah, I've noticed that with him as well. Now, just imagine, bring it full circle. Now, imagine all of these guys sitting around a table when they're doing the draft lottery. Now we've got
So
to
do
get
you.
it.
Boy, you're
I'm
really,
telling you,
you're really
programming.
trying. I mean, you went
I think
with
it's a
Tyvus
home
on
run.
that. You're bringing
Oh,
it back.
God, I think it's a home run.
First
You
night of
start
the
lottery
first
and
night
that
of the
sucker.
combine.
For that Monday night? Come on, man.
It's got to be.
That's
It's got to be
beautiful.
Monday night because on Tuesday
does.
when all the GMs and coaches talk, then it's a
Then
bonanza.
they'd have to know. Yeah, you want to know where you're picking at that point. But yeah, I think that's it. You could also, if you wanted to do it long before that, like earlier in the draft process, if you wanted to, you could also do it like the Saturday of the, you could do it on Super Bowl Sunday. You could do it on the Saturday or Sunday of the NFC
And
AFC
that's where,
championship games.
I was going to say, you want to spiff up the nice 5-hour Super Bowl pregame coverage? Throw a
Throw
draft
that in
lottery
there.
into the middle of it.
Can I interest you in that? I feel like that would be a certainly an intriguing thing to say the least. Speaking of intriguing, I don't know how closely you've looked beyond the Cavaliers and the Knicks. These NBA playoffs are sensational. We'll do some power rankings of that coming up. Your conversation with Glenn Cook coming up in about 15 minutes from now. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. I mean, how the heck do we get Oldak on the board, Gibbe? I mean, like, this is like, here's a Maybach. Just stay between the navigational beacons, boys.
I think Oldak, as Oldak and I were talking about, he's been there since before the sun came up. So he's been in the same room. Which
on a Friday.
Is fine in January when it's snowing sideways. It's not so great when it's 82 and sunny out, but we appreciate all of his help today.
Chris, you in on the NFL draft lottery?
Bo, I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of with you.
Oh,
you at first when I heard you say it, I was like, you know what? That's kind of ridiculous. The more I've heard you talk about
Come on.
I don't hate it.
I mean, next year, Caleb Williams, Drake May. Come on. Super Bowl Sunday, little half-hour lottery show, ping pong balls.
Who are the bottom 3 teams in your estimation vying for that?
Bucks.
And go.
Let me see. Bucks for sure. Well, what's interesting about this is, like, if you think about who the bottom 3 that you think that they will be, juxtapose what they actually were. If you went back a year ago at this time, I would have said Seattle, and they ended up going in the other way. Bucks for sure. I'm curious what Houston does. I could see Houston still being bad. And then
I feel like Chicago better take a step.
I want to go to an AFC team just because the AFC is so loaded. Like, could it be Tennessee if they go, like, if there's, or I don't know. Because the problem is the NFC is so bad that some of those teams that you feel like would be tanking are going to stumble into wins.
What about the Raiders?
Garoppolo, though. Like, I guess if he got hurt, they could lean into it. But he's too good to, like, tank. Arizona could absolutely be in that spot. Like, they could take a redshirt year for Kyler.
Yes.
Yeah. They could take a redshirt year. That would make some sense for them. A lot of these other places, though, it's hard. It's hard to see. You think maybe somebody in the NFC East, like, could the Commies get bad enough to where they do it? Maybe.
I feel like
it's harder.
The arrow's only up now that Dan Snyder is selling the team.
Yeah. That's we gave the fix for that pretty quickly. Like, you just rebrand that sucker, you get that stadium built in the district, and then away you go. There's a lot of options there to turn that thing around. That's one of the worst stewardships of an organization in the history of sport. The 20+ years at Snyder, to take one of the most proud, wealthy organizations in the sport. And in the old days, when they would first do, like, the Forbes most valuable, the then Washington Redskins were always right there with the Cowboys as the 2 most valuable teams in the NFL. And to think what has happened there over those years is a pretty stunning thing, to say the least. But the beautiful part of my lottery proposal is, really 1 through 8 would all be involved. You're all going to be in the mix, and then that changes things a great deal. All right, we've got some NBA fun. We've got, obviously, we'll be paying a lot of attention tomorrow at 6, but beyond that, we'll spend some time on that too. Some of these West battles are nuts. I mean, Lakers and Memphis, Golden State and Sacramento, Phoenix and the Clippers, all of those would pass as conference finals. Could.
The West is just insane.
It's crazy.
Just insane.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that's going on with Ja Morant and Memphis, somehow they're the 2 seed. Sacramento, they just broke a giant playoff-less streak, and now they're going to be home. But
against
congratulations, you get Golden State.
I saw this earlier this week that they are playing on ABC for the first time since, like, 2002. Sacramento. Yeah. Like the Weber, Bibby, Divac, Stojakovic Kings.
Oh.
That's how long you got to go back.
Those were fun teams.
They were. Yeah, to me that feels like a blink. Many people listening probably weren't even alive and have no point of reference of Chris Webber, the Sacramento King. But that's the way that goes. All right, you would do a little power ranking here, Gibbe?
Yeah, I feel like we should.
Let's go. I'm for it.
I mean, who's your number 1 overall?
Milwaukee.
Old day?
I mean, Chris, you follow the NBA closer
Yeah,
than me. It's Milwaukee, right?
To me, it's got to be Milwaukee. And I think the number 2 is Boston. Like, to me, the top 2 teams in the NBA right now that are left, it's in the East.
I don't have a problem with that. I think you could dang near go Philly. And they might be.
I could listen to that argument. Absolutely,
you might
I
go
could.
1, 2, 3 East. But I think this is what we're going to get to here is that it's the bottom of the West because of the aging star power that's in the West. So if you could make an argument the top 3 teams that are in the East, and then spots like 4 through where would the Cavs fit, not necessarily in terms of the health of the organization or how much you like the team, but just from the perspective of, like, is there a scenario where you can see the Cavaliers winning the NBA championship? To me, that seems too soon. Like, you're not making that step now. Conversely, like, could I see Golden State? Yeah, I could. I just saw it last year. I could see that for sure.
But, Bo, I think the interesting part of that conversation is if the Cavs were in the West right now, not even based on seeding, you could look at that and say, realistically, they could win the West.
I don't have a problem with that.
But I don't think you can say that about the East because you're going to have to go through Milwaukee, assuming you beat the Knicks in the first round, and then in all likelihood, either the Sixers or the Celtics.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's the tricky thing is you could be the East is so top heavy and the West is just absurdly balanced. You could almost make a case. I mean, the 8's not coming out of the West, but like I wouldn't be shocked if LeBron did it one more time and drug the Lakers.
I'm telling you right now, the Lakers are going to beat Memphis.
Well, yeah, I agree with you on
how
that.
I feel about that guy out there. But
I agree with you.
They're playing
I think they will too.
really good.
Yeah, and I think in more rest in first round series lasts 6 months. I mean, all of a sudden you're taking 3 weeks off between games, plenty of time to rest, and him and AD in a long series. I don't know. I like that, and they sneakily got a lot better at the deadline when people thought that they really couldn't. So they're a lot more versatile. And Memphis it's as you mentioned, Gibby. It's been a circus there the last 2 months.
I still like Denver. I don't know where I'd put them in my power rankings, but their length and like when they were here in that overtime game against us, my God, they've got some weapons.
For sure. It's just they have to just they're at the point in their gestation where they just have to go do it.
Correct.
He's won back-to-back MVPs. Like it's time to go do it a little bit. So I think there's a little bit of pressure on them. And then you think about Kawhi with the Clippers. You think about Durant in Phoenix, Golden State, if healthy. Some of the Golden State numbers when they have their ideal 5, it's stunning when they have their true starting 5. And it sounds like they're going to – I don't know what's exactly going on with Wiggins, but it sounds like they're going to have them all in
I
the way
think
they'll
Wiggins
go.
is coming off the bench, game 1.
Are they going to bring him off?
Yeah.
So more versatility there for them. Yeah. Do you guys feel like to me it feels like at the start of the year, one of the things that I do in the mornings is how are we going to judge a team, right? So what I mean by that is like with Buckeye football, you'll say national championship, beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, judge them off of that, hold them to that standard. Like this year with the Cavs, to me, when I looked at the roster, I said, go get to the second round. Like I don't care what your record is in between now and then, but to me, this should be a second round team. And I do think like if they're not, as fun as this has all been, it ends up a little hollow.
I think that's fair. I think you could look at it and say once the Cavs got Donovan Mitchell, I think a lot of expectations changed. Not to title, but Bo, I've been with you. I said all year that you got to get out of the first round because you hear the cliche all the time. Well, you got to get there and lose before you can get there and win. But at the same time, if you followed that like step-by-step process of just advancing to the next level each year, you're talking a 5-year thing here. So you gotta win a series this year, but next year, I think with the development of Mobley, you can talk about the Cavs at least contending to win the East.
Agreed.
So, but I look at this and I say for the Cavs, to your point, Bo, hollow, yes, disappointing, yes, but not necessarily a failure. Because I think you've seen a lot of people, and it's funny because we live in a day and age now where if you don't get what you want, people just consider it a failure. And a lot of good things have happened this year with the Cavs where I just can't sit here and say total failure if you don't win.
Chris, have you are you old enough to have seen a movie called The Big Lebowski?
I am, yes.
There's a scene where the dude, Jeffrey Lebowski, is in a study with the millionaire Jeffrey Lebowski. And the millionaire Jeffrey Lebowski says to the dude, he hands him a slip, and it's a ransom for Bunny Lebowski's. They're sent a tow or something like that. I can't remember the exact specifics, but it's a ransom note. And the dude says, "It's a bummer, man. It's a bummer." And that's what it would be if it's not the end of the world if they don't get to the second round, but it'd be a bummer, man.
Right. Exactly.
I want them in the second round. I want it going like 6 games where it gets a little uncomfortable maybe at some point.
Yeah.
Against
is the NBA in the early rounds, is it 2-3-2 or is it 2-2-1-1-1? I know they move it around a little bit. I can't remember if it's I think the finals is still 2-2-1-1-1.
It is.
I believe it is 2-2-1-1-1.
Throughout?
At least I know I'm looking at the first round.
Okay, so they're 2-2-1-1-1. Okay, so I think what you would want. Okay, so what I think would be ideal is if you could. I think in the first round, anything where you win is a win. I mean, a game 7 here against the Knicks. Are you kidding me? That's unbelievable. But anything playing, if you get to the point where you play Milwaukee, the value of playing like what would essentially be on a 2-2-1-1-1, a game 6 here, even a game 4 here, where that matters. A game 4 that matters would be really cool to play something like that. Down 2-1 or something like that, and then getting a win, and even the season 2-2. There's a lot of value to that. And the only thing I would say, and I think it buttresses your point, Chris, like Donovan Mitchell's in his prime. Like he's not 3 years from his prime. This is his prime.
Right.
So you do have to, not this year, but next year, you've got to go.
And to that point, though, too, I wonder if in 2 years, let's say, Donovan Mitchell, I think the hope is that he's not the guy, and that's Evan Mobley.
Sure.
So imagine Donovan Mitchell still in his prime, but maybe toward the back of it, with him not having to be the main focal point. Because, look, I don't think anybody would say – if the Cavs are going to go anywhere this year in the postseason, it's because of Donovan Mitchell. Like, he is the guy.
Yes.
But moving forward – you hope and you want that to be Evan Mobley because of all of the comparisons we've already heard here in the first couple of seasons. And I have to say, in the back half of the year, really since the All-Star break, so the last 20-plus games, I think Evan Mobley has taken a ton of leaps in his game.
For sure.
But he's just not there yet to lead a team in the postseason.
No, I mean, they're set up so well because they can go from the absolute apex of Donovan Mitchell's prime to hopefully at that same time Garland – by the time he's going out of that, Garland and Mobley are going into it. So they're set up that way very, very well. All right, good stuff, buddy. Always good talking to you. Coming up next, a little bit a highlight from the BPA as we sit down with Assistant General Manager Glenn Cook. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. The NFL draft just a couple of weeks away now. A lot of the heavy lifting already done. It's about organizing thoughts. One of the men who's going to organize some of ours around here is Assistant General Manager Glenn Cook. Here he is one-on-one with Gibbe in an excerpt from the BPA.
Let's get right into it, Glenn. From a free agency standpoint, you take a look. You guys have been very active over the past month and a half, and it may have taken a few more days than maybe – I know the fan base was clamoring for some things right away, but given the current contract situations and whatnot with this football team, things we're going to have to develop, especially on the market side. When you go to put together free agency, is there a big board similar to what you see with the draft in your big board that you put together?
Short answer, yes. I mean, the first thing we do is kind of try to step back, look at our own team, right? So closer to the end of the season, early January, you kind of want to zoom out, be as objective and honest with yourself as possible, and say, hey, where do we need to get better? Where do we need to make some improvements if we're trying to make the playoffs and compete for championships? So we kind of started there, really assessed, who we are, who we were, and where we want to go. And then, you start to build it out. Then you look at the marketplace. You look at who's available. Everyone knows who's a free agent, who's an RFA, who potentially could be available for a trade, which we'll probably talk about. And then you try to map out, okay, where's that nice blend of we need this, we want this, and this is available, right? And so that's kind of how we just approached it. That's a real probably simplistic way of describing it. And we do that over the course of, really 2 to 3 months as a group, and, just run through a bunch of different exercises and really challenge ourselves to make sure we know who's out there and what's going to be the best avenue to add them to our team. And then, you end up, writing a bunch of checks.
Yeah.
Obviously.
We don't have to do that. Someone else does that.
Yeah.
But you guys set it all up and where the dominoes fall.
I love the process because the thing about free agency is you plan all the way to Z and you just don't know, there's different factors, different drivers for these men as they make these decisions, and we try to stay as agile as possible. I think Andrew's talked about that, just being adaptable and trying to be as agile as possible in these situations and go get dudes we want in Cleveland.
All right, so you guys start working with your scouts and your analytics people, and just it's a very collaborative process. But then you meet with the coach.
Yeah.
And you've got 2 new coordinators that you're also throwing into the mix on that, in a new defensive coordinator and a new special teams coordinator. What is the process of that? Are you bringing in position coaches as well in that situation? Or?
So with Kevin, with the offensive side, it was easy, right? Like Kevin's here. That's an ongoing conversation, right? You're always talking about your team week to week, partly trying to make sure you have what you need in season to perform and play as well as you can on each side of the ball. But then as you're evaluating, you're just constantly checking the pulse of both coaches, both coordinators, to get a sense of like, hey,
I'm stepping away real quick.
This will really put us in a good spot as a unit. And, bringing in Jim a little bit later probably makes that a little bit tougher, but, he's pretty clear and definitive of what he wants. So it expedited the process for us. But yeah, it's like you said, it's collaborative. We're always working together and in conversation. On every move, even still as we're working through some of the guys who are potentially still available on the street, as we call it. We're constantly like, hey Jim, can you take a peek? Or Kev, what do you think about this guy? Do you think he fits? Whether it's adding depth or there's some guys that are still out there for a various amount of reasons. So it's great. The communication is important because it's not only talent, but you do want to make sure the fit is good. I think that's really important. So you have to talk to the coaches to make sure, like, hey, this guy's going to fit, right? You want to make sure this works.
Along those lines of making it a fit, and we'll get into the draft process and the interviews, but something that I've heard you mention over the last few months is that second and third hand info and like information about the player as a person. You know, how much of an impact is that in terms of your free agency? Because you have guys, there's a certain window that you can start talking to players and talking to their agents, and it's got to be a quick turnaround in some instances. So is it the same amount of research going into finding out about their background and who they are as much as it is what they've done on the field?
No, look, like we say, information is king. Like it's important. It's like a strong amount of currency in our business. So, you know, first the foundation is set really by the college process. You know, we change and evolve as people and humans, but kind of you are who you are at your core. So we do lean on like, hey, you know, 3-4 years ago, this is what we knew about this person, and you just kind of build off